patrol, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are, reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3,
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight as we kick off another week, I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you for listening on spacedoutradio.com and on Spreaker. As once again we come in from the frozen Canadian tundra and broadcast out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin in the Great White North, live on this Monday night, early Tuesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at SOR, we are broadcasting 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the cryptid, conspiracy, UFOs, extraterrestrials, and so much more. If you're on the Spaced Out Radio side and you're loving our music, that's because our resident guitar god is Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. You can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we say hello, good evening, good morning, how are you to everyone listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room, on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Force Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, well, it's time. It's $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special posting section on our website, and so much more. We're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. Well, at spacedoutradio.com, you can also read the latest blogs. Mine is about my own personal journey with depression and anxiety. And you can check out the Eric Markham SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. The New Agora newspaper is the official paper of this show, and the iPhone and iTunes app, Spirit Storybox. It's the official ghost hunting app of SOR. Remember, if you are listening in on Revolution Radio tonight, it is the largest non-profit online radio station going. Take time to visit freedomslips.com and donate today. The final Monday of the month means it's time for our feature show, Strange Days with UFO Cops Butch Witkowski. Butch is a seasoned veteran in the field of cryptozoology and UFOs, and throughout the state of Pennsylvania and the eastern United States, Butch has been fast-tracking information and research on bipedal werewolf-like creatures, along with UFOs and extraterrestrial contact. There's something strange that always seems to be happening in the triangle of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. Think about it for a second. In West Virginia, you have the Mothman sightings. In Ohio, you have everything from Bigfoot, Frogman, Dogman, and whatever else ends in man, and whatever else they're cooking up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And then in Pennsylvania, well, you have werewolves, Gettysburg, Kecksburg UFO, Dogman. Seriously, what is with this triangle? We're going to get into that and much more tonight, as that's what Butch Witkowski does as he tries to figure out. And once again, we bring him in for the Strange Days feature. Butch, welcome back for your monthly visit. How are you, my friend?
I'm well. How are you, sir? Good.
What have you been up to?
A lot of no good, but...
Well, that's always good.
Yeah. Just a lot of stuff going on all over the state. Like you said, Pennsylvania is kind of a weird place. I'm thinking of moving to Canada.
Well, you know what? Our population's going to go from like 36 million to like 100 million in no time. If everybody actually says they're coming up here after the elections.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, is that right after the election?
Absolutely. It's good to have you on again, my friend. It's always a pleasure to get a chance to chat with you because you're so knowledgeable when it comes to these topics. And for people who are listening to you for the first time, I would love it if you give yourself an introduction on who you are.
Well, I've been at this now for 27 years. I started in ufology through a sighting that I had that I couldn't explain, and I wanted to know what it was, what the truth was, and that took me on the voyage I'm on now, which has also encompassed the paranormal and cryptozoology and some other stuff that they don't even have a name for yet. And ufology has always been at my heart. I mean, that's what I look at the most. Followed by cryptozoology and then paranormal. I was a member of MUFON for a while. I was a chief investigator, STAR team member. Went off my own, started my own group, UFO Research Center, Pennsylvania, back in 2009. So I guess that means we're going into our 7th year, I guess. And we have groups all over the country. We have a couple in Europe, and which we found to be really good when it comes to getting information, because I don't have to sit here and struggle with something. I can throw something out to the group and get an answer from many different people that are longtime researchers, and some of them a lot longer than I've been. And it just kind of took off from there, and we stay busy with the UFO reports and crypto reports, and now some paranormal stuff leaking in. And that's pretty much it. I'm retired, so I get to do this 24/7, which is a good thing sometimes. We have our own equipment. We have our own vehicles that are fully equipped. And we can go out and cover anything, whether it's paranormal, cryptozoological, or a UFO sighting. I mean, everything's on the trucks. We have 2 of those. And cover all of Pennsylvania. I mean, we've been to Missouri, we've been to North Carolina, we've been to Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. So we go where the action is, and that's the neat part about it, that, I have that group that is just ready to, call them at 3 o'clock in the morning, say, I'll pick you up in an hour, and they're ready to go. And so here we are, after 27 years.
When you first started out 27 years ago, did you expect to be able to tie in the fields? Because everybody segregates the field. Ghost hunting is segregated from UFOs. Extraterrestrial contact is segregated from Bigfoot. Even Bigfoot is segregated from, say, Dogman or werewolves or what other cryptid creatures are out there. When you started, did you segregate everything as well without knowing that it would eventually somehow be interwoven with each other?
Yeah, probably in the first 5 or 6 years I did. I thought everything was a separate paranormal genre. And over time, I've just come to, in my own mind, believe that this is all intertwined somehow. How? Don't know. Don't know if it's a mental thing, or if it's a tangible thing, or if it's from outside our realm, or, I mean, I've even looked at alternative universe, alternative beings, alternative this, that, and whatever. It's just uncanny when you're reading a UFO report, and all of a sudden there's a paranormal thing creeping into it, or you're reading a paranormal thing and there's a case that we just got a little bit ago, and I really haven't even gotten into it all that much yet, but a paranormal group in Idaho was out at an old church. Church has been abandoned for many, many, many years, but people always see lights in the building on certain nights. Usually it's a full moon, but they swear and declare that they're seeing like somebody walking around inside with a flashlight or a lantern. So they kind of got this thing as one of their investigations. They went out on a weekend. They didn't see anything on a Friday night. Saturday night, about 11 o'clock, they're outside actually getting some coffee, and one guy notices there's a light down on the first floor, and this church only has 2 floors, and the second floor is basically where the organ was and where there was a small office. And it would go up there, and then it would come back down again. So while the team was walking toward the church, which was not all that far away, maybe 20, 30 feet, one guy noticed that there was a large red orb in the background that kept going back to the left and to the right and left and right. And they got inside, and through radio communication with the guy they left outside to watch the orb, when the orb flashed out, the lights inside the church flashed out. So they came back out again, they're discussing it, the orb pops up, bang, the lights start going on again inside. So that's weird. But,
incredibly.
But could something like that control something from up there to down here, vice versa? Yeah, I'm sure. Because, they tried it 3 times, and whenever they came out of the building and the orb appeared, the lights came on. when they made their trek to the building, and then even one time they left somebody in the hallway of the building, when it disappeared, the lights went out. So it had nothing to do whether anybody was inside or outside, because there was an individual inside. He could see the lights and shadows. He didn't know where they were coming from. He could see nothing moving around, or he heard nothing. He picked up nothing on his tape recorder, on his recording device, and the orb appeared, the lights appear. The orb goes out, the lights go out. Now that to me is very interesting and very strange. I've never heard anything like that.
The reason why I asked about what you think about the tie-in between the two, or every type of phenomena that we can encompass with the word paranormal, is because when I first started getting my own personal experiences, they started very paranormal. A lot of spirit activity. I remember my daughter feeling that there was someone in her room, and my neighbor's house was probably 15 feet, because I lived in a subdivision. You know how tight houses can be in those areas, and my neighbor's house was probably 15 feet from mine, and he had a sensor light on the side of his house. And I realized that as I sat on her bed and started asking questions, whether they were, when you ask yes or no questions, I realized that every time it was a yes answer, the sensor light would go on. And this being, whoever I was talking to through the sensor light, okay, we must have had maybe 15, 20 questions lit up by that sensor light. There was no wind, there was no elements, there was no raccoons, bears, or whatever, or stray dogs or cats running around that would set it off. We had the blinds on the window wide open so we could check on that. And then my experiences went cryptid, and that's when I had the Bigfoot sightings of the 2 Bigfoot. And then from there, that's when all the UFOs started. And that's why I've always wondered, how are these all tied together? And it amazes me that there are so few people in the paranormal field doing investigations, whether you're in the cryptid side, whether you're in the ghost side, whether you're in the UFO side, that actually believe there is something to this, that they are all tied together. Are you shocked by that?
No, I'm not. I mean, you would almost think it would have to be some kind of tie-in, because you have so many questions about something you're not going to get an answer on, yet they are there. It's a viable sighting, or a viable recording, or a viable photograph. And, I don't know how many photographs have been taken paranormal-wise, and, you're looking at the photograph, you look at the cemetery, and, oh, yeah, there's a little glowing light down the cemetery near this tombstone, and you look up the lower upper right-hand corner, rather, of the video or the picture, and there's an orb, or there's a long streak of light that has nothing to do with them, because they were not using a flash, nothing was bouncing off of tombstones. And I've seen that with infrared pictures, where it picks up something in the photograph that is in the sky, definitely. I mean, you can see that. But, the picture was taken of something on the ground. Like the one that comes to mind is there was a rocking chair on an old home that was still owned by people, but nobody lived there for many, many years. I think they moved out in the early 50s or 60s or something like that. But the rocking chair was just left on the porch because that was Grandpa's rocking chair, and that's where they wanted to stay. And on many occasions, people would be walking down the street, and the rocking chair would be rocking like somebody was sitting in it. And so lots of people, tourists I'm assuming, or locals, took a lot of pictures. And in a couple of those pictures, out of the dozen that was sent to me, in the picture, one in particular, which was taken across the street from the residence, there is absolutely the photo shows an absolute, I'm going to say an oval, not an orb, not round, but more oval and long. And in the first frame, it's there. In the second frame, it's moved forward a little bit, going out of the camera frame. And in the third frame, this thing is massive. I mean, it's tripled in size, and now it's glowing a bright orange. And in the fourth frame, it's gone. That's not a camera issue. matter of fact, the guy was using pretty much a brand new Nikon D series digital, and I had him get the lens checked to make sure there was no issues with the lens. He took it to a camera shop. They checked it for any viruses, any dirt, anything like that. They said, nope, it's brand new, it's clean, there's nothing wrong with it. They checked the camera, they checked the speeds and all that stuff, the automatic shutters. Everything was fine with the camera, so it was not a camera issue. About 2 months later, he goes back and tries this again. Now, of course, the rocking chair is moving. Nobody's figured that one out yet. But the last shot in a series of 10 frames that he took, almost the identical, when I put them up side by side on a computer, maybe, I don't know what it would be in feet, but there's like, it's moved more to the left and up higher. But it's the same thing. The same thing is there. It's exactly the same as the very first one he caught on the first frame. And that, to me, is just bizarre. There have been many instances where UFO guys have been out on a star watch. And, you know, they'll see a bright flash in the woods, or they'll see multiple flashes in a cemetery that they have no idea. It's not ball lightning. And some are captured on video, some aren't. But, you know, just to say that, you know, you're watching the sky, your head's pointed up, you're relaxing in a chair, however you're doing it, your binoculars up in the air, and all of a sudden the cemetery across the street, there's flashing lights going on all over the cemetery. That is bizarre.
At what point, Butch, do you start looking at things and saying, okay, there's something to this phenomenon that it's tied together? Or do you think that you really, in order to solve each mystery, do you have to keep it segregated? Because if you bring it all together under one roof, you can really, really lose focus on what you're trying to solve.
Yeah, you have to keep it separate. Put that other stuff as a side note. You know, complete the investigation, do your research, whatever you have to do, talk to the witnesses, make the photographs on your own. And then you have to look at the whole thing in its entirety and see if it does tie in. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you can make a connection that at a certain time this happened, at the same time this happened, but then maybe in another case you'll have that, okay, so this happened at such and such a time, and this didn't happen till 5 or 6 hours later. Or this happened at just when it was nightfall. This happened when daybreak. So you got to take all that stuff into consideration. But, you know, I think more and more as these things pop up, these weird things, I mean, they may come to me as a UFO report, or they may come to me as a paranormal report. And then, you know, you find something not quite kosher in the report or the photograph or the video. And then when you get back to the witness and you're talking to them, you know, they were like, oh, well, we didn't know what that was. And we didn't think it had anything to do with the investigation. You know, they were looking for ghosts, or they were looking for UFOs, and vice versa. And, you know, this strange event happens. And we're seeing that more and more. I would say over the last year and a half, I probably got a dozen or more things like that, cases that came through with something weird going on at the same time, when it wasn't there when they started, and that was not what they were looking for. And same thing with the crypto stuff. I mean, like you said, in Ohio they got whatever, West Virginia they got whatever, Pennsylvania, western part of Pennsylvania they got whatever, and central Pennsylvania we got ours, and in eastern Pennsylvania there's nothing. There's not a report out of eastern Pennsylvania. It's just like, you know, it's either central Pennsylvania within our loop, our research loop, or it's in western Pennsylvania. And then it crosses into Ohio, of course, and then down into West Virginia. But we're not getting anything in Virginia or Maryland or Delaware or New York, you know. It's very strange right now. We just had a report from a group named Search that operates out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. One of their researchers and a deputy sheriff witnessed a UFO, large red glowing orb moving very slowly, and gets a white aura around it and kind of flashes out with a bright flash that pretty much blinds them. And, we don't get in the area that I'm talking about, our lichen area where we're looking for this bipedal. Although there have been a lot of Bigfoot reports in that area over time, we haven't gotten any. And eastern Pennsylvania, again, nothing. So it just seems like whatever it is, you could almost triangulate everything in central and western Pennsylvania with things that are happening in Ohio and in West Virginia area. And it's just a very strange thing that's going on because, it's a lot of reports. I hear from other researchers out in western Pennsylvania. I mean, they're getting all kind of stuff out there. We've kind of, with putting aside the UFO stuff and paranormal for a moment, a lot of our stuff is the bipedal canine, and people seeing stuff that they just don't even know how to describe. A dark shadow or something, moving across a road or along a road, and going behind some trees and then darting across the road, but they have no visual of what it looks like other than a dark shadow. So what's that now?
When you
got a lot of people.
Go ahead.
No, a lot of people talking about demons. I mean, they're trying to push everything on demons. I was listening to research the other night talking, and like a few other people, he's saying that these crafts that we're seeing and these abductions that are taking place, which are also on the rise, are demons. Well, I'm not quite at that point yet. I mean, I don't see any connection there. Although I'm a guy that if you pull out a Ouija board, I'm going to run.
You know what? It's funny you mention the Ouija board because I'm assuming you're not going to tune into our Halloween night special then where we're doing a live Ouija board session on the air.
I don't think so.
But you know what, Butch? I do have to say this, and I realize it's not your realm, but I find it funny that a lot of people will absolutely abscond the Ouija board, yet they will use dowsing or a ghost box, or a Frank's box or whatever you want, or any type of app that says words, which is pretty much doing the exact same thing that a Ouija board does. And I find it funny how they try and say, well, I use this, but I'm staying away from the old Ouija board.
Well, I was my mother and her neighbor, who was from Scotland. And, boy, she have a brogue. But every Saturday night, almost, they would break out this Ouija board. And they would sit there and play with this thing for hours. And this one particular evening, I was out back on the patio, and I was reading a book or something, and I came in for some water, and they were in the dining room at the table playing with this thing, and I just kind of walked up and was watching them, and I just got this feeling, and I don't even know how to describe it anymore. It was just a dread, a fear, somebody just dropped a bomb, and you're saying, like, okay, time to get the hell out of Dodge. I mean, and then a couple days later, it was on the table again, and I wouldn't even walk past it. I would not walk past that. I just wouldn't walk past it. I went to my grandmother's house next door, walked through her house, out her front door, and came in my front door just to, do what I had to do. I would not walk past that until this day. If you would set one of those up in front of me, I'm leaving. I'm not going to leave the building, but I'm just going to get away from it. And I have no idea why. None.
I'm the same way with snakes. Same way.
Yeah, me.
I'll tell you two quick weird stories about a spirit board that we were using. So this would have been around the fall of 2016 or 2013, pardon me, because we haven't entered fall of 2016 yet, so go figure. And I'm sitting around at my friend's house. We're using this spirit board, and this board wants to talk to me. And literally, it is telling me, and I'm going to give everyone the Coles Notes version here, it's telling me I have to buy a lottery ticket. That the draw in 6 weeks is going to be for $43 million. This is where I'm supposed to get the ticket. And I just figured, oh, well, let's just play it by ear, see where it goes. Well, all of a sudden, after 6 weeks, it comes to the next draw, and be damned if the date that this spirit board said that the draw was going to be 43 million, it was 43 million, which is odd considering up here the way the lottery works is it goes in usually in increments of 5 million or 10 million. So I go buy my ticket because there's too much logic here at this point. You know what I'm saying? It's just being very, very strange how everything was lining up from 6 weeks previous. I went to work, forgot about the ticket because I had it in my wallet, and that Friday night, about 9:30 at night, we hop back on the board, and the board says wants to talk to me again, and it spells out congratulations. I said, congratulations on what? And it spelled out lottery. Well, be damned if I don't go check the ticket, and I don't even have a single bloody number on there. I was so pissed off, man. You have no idea how upset I was, Butch. No idea.
Did it spell out LOL?
No, actually, its response was, must have been on a different plane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the second one that was kind of odd when we were using it was friends of ours at their house. They had an old wood-burning stove that heated up their home, which was like a one-level log cabin-style home. And we're sitting around there. It's about 10:30 at night. And all of a sudden, the owner of the house says, hey, who lit the fire? And we all look at the fireplace, and the fireplace is burning. And, the logs inside are burning. And he goes, I haven't lit that thing since 9:30 this morning. So we start asking around, did one of the kids light the fire because they were cold or something? Everybody denied it. And all of a sudden the board says, spelled out, I did. And we asked the board why, and it spelled out, I was cold.
I'd be halfway out of the country by that time.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't do that, but the lottery thing pissed me off, and the fire thing happened before the lottery, but, there was enough protection around, and we kind of went with it. But I do want to ask you a couple questions, though, because you mentioned orbs. Now, there is this great debate in the paranormal field on whether or not orbs should even be accounted for, because if you pick them up on camera, it could be dust, it could be snow, it could be bugs or any type of water type or dampness reflection, dew, or anything like that. What kind of stock, in your opinion, should investigators be putting into orbs?
I would say pretty much most, 95% of the photographs I've seen of orbs. Now, I'm talking about orbs on the ground. I'm not talking about orbs in the sky. Orbs on the ground are dust. You're going into an old house that nobody's been in for whatever, and you got maybe 4 or 6 members of your team stomping around that house. And one guy really proved it really well, and I doubt very much if I could ever find that thing on YouTube again, but what he did was he took and set up a camera before they even walked into this room. And he just turned the camera on, left it run, and he had one of his guys walk down the hallway adjacent to the room. And all of a sudden, all these orbs, now he wasn't in the room, he was just adjacent. There's a wall between that room and the hallway. He's walking down the hallway, normally walking, not stomping his feet, just a normal walk, and you can see these things just coming from the ceiling, from the wall, from the floor, just floating all over the place. Now, had he not done that, and somebody went in there and set up their camera, but they were walking around to different rooms, maybe upstairs, the dust falling from the ceiling just from them walking around. I mean, it was amazing. But the orbs that intrigue me are where a team may set up their cameras and leave the house. They don't go in the house. They just set their cameras up maybe in the morning or early afternoon. They don't come back till midnight, and their cameras are all in the house, but they're outside the house. They're viewing everything on a monitor. And some of these camera setups they have, they'll have, they can watch 8 cameras at one time. And when you see something just appear out of nowhere and slowly go across the room and drop, or you see something come through a door, the door is closed, and this orb comes through the door, and as it gets toward the camera, it kind of dissipates and evaporates and disappears. Those to me are interesting. Another thing where they get a lot of orbs is, when they go to a cemetery, and there's no lot of dust in the cemetery, if any, but they start taking pictures and they use a flash, and that flash, you ever see some of these stones? They're very highly polished granite. Or they may have an emblem, maybe from maybe the guy belonged to some temple or something like that, where they have an emblem in there, and it's a highly polished chrome or bronze emblem. And the minute that flash hits it and comes back to the camera, with a digital camera especially, because a digital camera, when you push that trigger, there's a millisecond there that camera is just taking in what it sees, and then it takes the picture. And you'll see these orbs that, they weren't there a minute ago. The guy didn't move anywhere. And bang. And another thing that's a problem with these guys when they go out, if you've got, they'll produce photographs of plasma. But they don't tell you at the time, until you do a little bit more talking, that the guy aside of them is smoking, a cheap $2 cigar. And all the smoke, with no wind or anything, a nice still night, is all blowing in front of the camera. Well, what do you got now? Now you got plasma. I've never seen a good photograph of plasma. Orbs, yeah, there are a couple out there that are kind of hard to describe. I mean, hard to figure out what they are. I mean, when something comes through a door and there's nobody in the house, there's nobody walking around, or you get a shadow that comes through a window or a wall from one room to another, and the shadow all of a sudden, starts to take a form, and then until it's all done, it's just a big orb, and then it'll evaporate like it wasn't there. But you're watching it, you see it on the screen, and I was just reading what Eric put on the chat room here about orbs splitting into two. There are a lot of good photographs of that happening, and a lot of them are in cemeteries. Matter of fact, there's one of the best ones come out of England not too awful long ago, where they went to look at an old morgue in a sanitarium that was closed for probably 100 years, and they got permission to go in, and again, being pretty savvy with what they were doing, they set their cameras up and left. And they've got an orb. When you're looking at it on the screen, it looks about the size of maybe a baseball, but it's changing color as it's coming down the hallway, and then when it gets about halfway down the hallway, it splits into 2, then it splits into 4, then it splits into 6, and then they're just hanging there. They don't move forward or backward, up or down. They all come back together into one, and poof, they vanish. And I'm thinking to myself, I had to look at it like 3 times, and I'm like, what the hell is that? How did it do that? What is that? So we know so little about ufology for all these years we've been at it. We know so little about cryptozoology for all these years we've been at it. And paranormal even longer, and we still don't know a whole lot about it. There's so many things that happen that we can't explain, even with the technology that we have. And, and it depends on the person that's looking at it. I mean, if you're looking at it with a justified eye where, well, it could be or could not be, one of those things back and forth, and you come to a conclusion, you can have somebody who's been doing it 20 years, and they'll go like, I know exactly what that is. But then when you ask them, they go like, well, I'll explain it to you sometime. So you're right back where you started. But there's just too many weird things happen that are being caught on, and these cameras today are getting really sophisticated. I mean, you can slow the speeds down now to pretty much nothing, or you can use high-speed surveillance cameras like we use, which will take a picture every half second, and it's a perfectly clear picture through to infinity. And so I think the paranormal guys, the crypto guys, and I'm not talking about any reality shows here, I'm just talking about the guys that are really out there getting their boots muddy. and the UFO guys are all getting more sophisticated as time goes on and putting that technology to good use. Yes, it does cost money. I understand all that. I've spent enough of it, but it's time for because the naked eye and the mind can do many different things that you're going like, I don't know about this. And, your mind kind of tells you what you think you saw or what you want to see. And it's just like people with dowsing rods you mentioned a little earlier. I was with a group that was using dowsing rods, and, I could make no rhyme or reason to what they were doing, but I could see, watching their hands, that they were actually turning that thing, So somebody said to me, well, they make them now where the handles are not attached to the dowsing rod. The handles are free. So even if they turn their hands, it's not going to turn the rods. So I went along with the same guy doing the same thing at the same place, and they didn't move an inch. So I'm kind of lost on that one. I don't understand enough about it, but I think one of these days you're going to get more sharing of information with the different groups, because, like I said, it's a good possibility that they're connected somehow. We just don't know how they're connected, or why would they be connected. Is there some entity that's making these things happen, or is it, I don't know. It could be anything, I guess. But I just tell people, no matter what you're doing, just keep an open mind. If you try to pin something like, oh, well, that's kind of like the Roswell deal. Well, maybe it's not, Or I saw that on Ghostbusters on television. Well, maybe it's not. So it's intriguing. I mean, it's getting stranger as we go on. That's one thing I'll say. It's not getting dull.
Well, that's why we call this Strange Days with you, my friend.
Yeah, it's getting stranger. There was a Bigfoot sighting up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I believe it was this week. Last week. And now, a Bigfoot sighting in Pennsylvania, that's like saying there was a Bigfoot sighting in downtown L.A. I mean, Harrisburg and the county surrounding, that's a big area, very big metropolitan area. It's also the state capital. I could not find any Bigfoot sightings ever recorded in that area. Yet there's a report of one running across the road, and evidently a partial print was found. So I don't know about that yet. I guess the individuals that are investigating that are still on it. But so, wow, that's almost downtown Harrisburg.
Well, it just seems to happen all around British Columbia here, so nothing really surprises me with Bigfoot anymore.
I think some of the cryptids that are coming out, like reptoids and lizard men and all this stuff, it's just like reading an old book. You missed a part and then you found it, and you're like, wow, yeah, okay, I know what that is. And I remember seeing that in a movie. And it almost reads identical to the report you just got. And some of the things are just really strange, just the way they take place and the areas they're taking place in, where they never had any reports ever, and all of a sudden a report pops up. And there is just this vast number of experiences that are coming forward, and everything, in ufology, cryptozoology, paranormal, stuff in the waters, lakes, rivers, oceans, and it's not just Pennsylvania and a couple other states. I mean, it's all over the country. I mean, I read some reports in Colorado that just about stood my hair up, and on Bigfoot and guys that are trying to hunt it down, and I don't mean hunt as in shoot and kill. I mean just track it. And that's another thing that's been happening pretty much recently where professional trackers, these guys that do this for a living, are getting involved. And I don't think they'd waste their time, effort, and energy if they didn't think somebody or something wasn't out there. And then you get to that point where, okay, so are we dealing with flesh and blood creature? And I don't care if it's Bigfoot or a canine or upright canine or a dogman or whatever. Are we dealing with flesh and blood creature, or are we dealing with something that's not flesh and blood? And then, although I hesitate to use the word interdimensional, I don't rule that out either, because you know as well as I do, anything's possible. We don't know everything. Matter of fact, we know very little after all these years. I mean, what have we produced in 50 years of researching and looking for Bigfoot? Zero. Nada. We got one good picture of Patty, the Patterson-Gimlin film. That's it. After her, it's like nothing. DNA testing went down the tube. Hair samples went down the tube. I mean, people have spent a lot of money thinking they had something, and they really never had anything. And I don't know what it's like up there in British Columbia, but I do know down here in the States, it's just freaky right now. And it has been for about pretty much the last year.
The problem up here in Canada is that we tend to keep quiet about our sightings. You know, we don't have an invigorating group up here like MUFON or any research societies that take this too seriously. I mean, hell, I have 2 UFO sightings that I reported years ago. I reported them to UFO BC because people really didn't have a place to turn, to get any follow-up. And I never even got a phone call back. I left my phone number and everything because people need answers when this happens. And I'll fill you in on something here that we're going to be adding very, very soon here to the Spaced Out Radio website, is we're actually going to be starting a reports page on the website. So if any of the listeners out there all of a sudden have that UFO sighting or werewolf sighting or something along those lines, I have a gentleman named Mike Schultz who's going to be joining the team here shortly, who's going to be taking the reports. And then what we can do is, let's say, for instance, somebody from Pennsylvania gets a hold of us and says, hey, I just had a werewolf sighting. Well, then what we can do is we can then pass that report on to you, Butch. And so on and so forth with other groups that we're involved to try and get people to help out. So that's why we're going to be starting a reports page, because like many people out there, I know the frustration of trying to get a hold of somebody on the air or on the phone, and you get a voicemail or you get an email and you never hear back. You don't know whether they've taken your information. They don't call with any questions or anything like that. It's ridiculous. And these are supposed to be so-called researchers. So we're going to be trying to do something a little bit different where we can help people along those lines on spacedoutradio.com, and that'll be coming very, very soon.
That sounds good. That really does sound good.
Well, the other part is nobody else is doing it on the big shows. Nobody else is doing that. And, you always have to try and be a little bit different than what the other guy is doing. And I think it'll start off very slowly, but it's also something where we can get people involved, because we now know enough people, such as yourself or Ronald Murphy or, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal or whoever it may be, where we can get a hold of people and try and get some solution to whether or not that person is in Canada, whether they're in the United States, wherever they may be. We can now offer that by doing these reports.
That's a great idea.
I thought of it myself, man. I did it all on my own.
Wow. Okay.
Hey, I have a question from Eric in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, and he is asking, Butch, what became of the DNA testing that Dr. Ketchum did?
It was all corrupted. They found dog hair, bird feathers, dog crap, squirrel hair, leaves, a couple little old branches, pieces of branch, like the bark off a small thin branch. They tried twice with 2 different DNA labs. The one here in the United States wouldn't even look at it because they said, we know what it is, it's nothing. And then they sent it down to Australia, where there is the largest DNA lab in the world that has DNA from every known animal, mammal, fish, bird on this planet. And they could come up with nothing, only because, and they did an extensive study, and they didn't even charge for it. They just went at it, and they came out with, it's just too corrupted. There's not what they said. They said they had hair and scat. Well, yeah, they had hair and yeah, they had scat, but they had hair and scat from everything but anything resembling an unknown creature. I mean, they identified everything. And I don't know what happened. I mean, she used to be pretty much on the net a lot, and then right after that, I mean, she just kind of disappeared.
I always wonder about these scientists who get this scat or these hair samples or footprints or something along those lines, and how it always comes back that it has been manipulated one way or another. Do you find it, and we're talking with Bigfoot right now, or any cryptid creature, do you find that maybe that there are people who do not want to believe that this possibly could be evidence of a creature that is unknown? Or do you think that maybe there is some sort of conspiracy behind it, Butch, where maybe the government doesn't want it to get out, so it's easy to manipulate a sample by saying, oh, it's dog hair, or it's cat hair, or it's tree bark, or something along those lines?
Oh, yes, on both counts. I agree with you 100% there. There have been folks that had super duper good hair samples, and never heard a thing about it. I mean, they're gone. Nobody knows anything about it. Those people can't be contacted. They changed however they were contacting on the internet. I mean, there's just no way to contact them and find out what happened. And I always tell researchers, look, if you're going to turn over a sample to anybody, to any lab for any reason, don't turn over everything you have. Turn over a small section of it. They only need a small section. They don't need, like if you have I'm assuming that Bigfoot would have a large pile of scat. So if you collected that whole pile, you don't want to give them the whole pile. You just want to give them a piece of it, Same thing with hair. If you got a tuft of hair that you pulled out of a tree branch or something like that, give them that, a piece. Don't give them the whole thing. Just, pull some apart and just put that, save that, and always make sure you're wearing gloves when you're doing that, even when you're collecting it. But and I've talked about this before, I can't understand why we're not looking for, and I'm not a Bigfoot hunter, okay? This cryptozoology stuff is pretty new to me for the last 2.5 years. Why are we not looking for their trash? Look, if this thing is flesh and blood, it has to eat. If there's more than one, there has to be sex involved. That means there has to be a female, there has to be little ones, there has to be old ones. And since we're only seeing this one massive, well-built adult male running around, where's the rest of the family hiding? Why aren't we looking in old abandoned buildings? This state's full of abandoned buildings from the 1800s all the way through to the 60s and 70s, in the woods, in the mountains, old munitions factories, shoe factories, lace factories that are still intact. They all have basements. Why aren't we going down those basements? Why aren't we looking for...
Because that's a horror movie waiting to happen there, my friend.
Well, got to go from... something's got to kill you, right?
Well, true.
If you got to go, you might as well go by knowing that you finally found it.
Haven't we all seen Blair Witch Project? Isn't that what happens there?
Yeah, I think so. But you have caves. You have in Pennsylvania, there's like 390 mines that are closed.
Yeah, same as up here.
You know, a lot of mines, a lot of caves. We've got these buildings all over the place. We've got these old railroad transfer buildings where, you know, like if they were bringing a load on a train from Philadelphia, that load was eventually going to wind up in California or New Mexico or wherever. They had these homes that were built along the tracks, you know, commercial buildings, but they had an upstairs, downstairs. They had big kitchens, big living rooms, and bedrooms and showers and all that stuff. And what they were used for was when a train came through and the crew, you know, was in the train for like 16 hours and now it's their break, they dropped them off there and a fresh crew would get on. And then they move on, and there would be another way station somewhere down the road. And Pennsylvania is littered with those. And on our next expedition, we're going to be checking a couple of those out because it's I said this to a Bigfoot researcher, and he really thought I was nuts. He really did. And I asked him, I said, look, if you're walking through the woods and you would see a bird's nest, and there's nothing in it, it's an old bird's nest, it's just been up there forever. There's no birds in it, there's no shell, there's nothing there. I said, would you take that as evidence? And he said, what are you, crazy? What are you drinking? I said, let me ask you one more question. What do birds make nests out of? Really? Yeah. I said, sticks, feathers, rags, trash, hair, whatever they can find. Oh, yeah. I said, just a thought.
Dog hair, too. When we brush our dog hair, we just let it go so the birds can pick it up to build their nests.
I mean, there's kind of stuff. You know, they find a dead deer, and they see chew marks on it. Okay, so you got a bone with a bunch of chew marks on it, or you got a bone that's been broken and ripped off. Now, this is out in the woods. This wasn't a deer that was hit by a tree or run over by a tractor-trailer. So why wouldn't you take that bone along and at least do a measurement on the bite marks or the scratch marks, claw marks, cut marks, whatever you found? I mean,
I can tell you this, and sorry for cutting you off because we only got a couple minutes before we go to break here. Edie Kaito, who has a Bigfoot gifting site in Indiana, and she keeps it very stealthy and very quiet about where she's actually hidden this. She actually, in one of her giftings, had like one of those plastic juice containers. She actually has teeth marks.
Wow.
And she had it measured, so she's in Indiana, and there was also teeth marks around Ape Canyon near Mount St. Helens that was found in bones. And they were within a couple millimeters of being identical in size.
Wow.
So the evidence is out there. It's a matter of trying to find someone, Butch, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. It's a matter of trying to find someone who is willing to put their reputation on the line, saying, this isn't a bear, this isn't a cougar, this isn't a wolverine, this isn't man. This is something that is out there. Look at the teeth marks, because teeth marks, like mathematics, don't lie. Exactly.
One case we were just out where we went to talk to witnesses for 5 sightings that we had, and the one witness was talking about there was a deer boneyard in the area, and we have them in this area too. These are deer that are hit on highways and they're taken by the state, and they're just put in a dump. And so whenever I find these dumps or hear about them, I like to visit them, because if I see something with chew marks in it, now it could be a wolf, but let's say it is a wolf. Let's say it's a full-grown wolf or a coy wolf. The bite mark from a coy wolf as opposed to a full-size wolf is way different in size. Now, if I've got a wolf bite or wolf marks, and I have one that's 3 times that size, what am I dealing with there?
Exactly.
So,
and Butch, on that note, we hear the music. I'm going to get you to hold on. We're going to take our first break of the night. Butch Witkowski, Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio, live tonight. We'll be right back after this break.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit. And expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. On this Monday night, early Tuesday morning, Bill Cardwell has set the password for the SOR Space Travelers. Idiosyncratic is your password tonight. Idiosyncratic. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers. Remember, if you're a listener on Revolution Radio, the double R, is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor and donate today. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going into the paranormal. We're talking all things ghostly with Andrea Message. That is tomorrow night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, with me, Dave Scott, on the mighty SOR. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can check out our SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. We're gaining members every single week, so make sure you sign up today. We got some really cool features for you that others do not offer you for your hard-earned money. You can also check out our music section, which is dedicated to Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Bumblefoot is the official music of this show. The SOR Space Wire, our news section by Eric Markham, and so much more. You can also read up on our blogs. My latest is What It's Like to Battle with Depression and Anxiety. Kind of went off the other day, so I wrote about it. Tonight we are talking with Butch Witkowski. He is the leader, the founder of UFOcop.com. Butch, welcome back.
I'm here. I'm ready to rock.
Well, of course you are. You're always ready to rock. Always. Hey, earlier in the show we were talking about orbs. I had an interesting experience during... My wife and I, we were attending a friend's meditation group. And they had the singing bowls where you rub on the outside and it makes that really cool sound, and there was chimes and a First Nations drum and everything like that. And I'm not a big meditator, and I kind of pulled out of it because, not that I thought it was weird or anything like that, it just, my mind is always going. I have trouble shutting it down to concentrate, to meditate. Anyways, this really cool thing happened. We're in the living room of a friend's house, and then all of a sudden, as I'm kind of just staring off into the blank while everybody's meditating and I'm trying to get back in, my eyes are open, I see this orb at about 3 feet high come right across the doorway, stop right in the middle of the doorway in the bedroom that was by us, and then turn and start coming out right towards us. And it was probably golf ball size, real orangish red, just a beautiful, beautiful color. Now, that I consider an orb. I'm still not sold on the whole photographic evidence of orbs. How would you go about, then, trying to explain what an orb is, something that you've seen with your own eyes, but you can't express it because a camera or a video camera is not going to do it justice?
I would have to say it is whatever your belief system is. I mean, people see these things and, they'll, at a seance or an investigation, and their belief system says that this is an entity, this is a ghost, this is a soul from the past. Same thing when they're in a cemetery, when they see one or more or three or five. These are lost souls. They haven't left the earth yet. They need something. They're looking for something. So it's the belief system, I think, plays a big part in orbs. I really do, because there have been not hundreds, there have been thousands of explanations of what orbs are. The ones on camera that are taken or video, I mean, they are what they are. I mean, something that appears, disappears. It is what it is. But the orb phenomenon has been around since, you had in the 40s when we were at war with Japan and Germany. I mean, they called them Foo Fighters. And these were bright orange orbs that would follow our bombers and our fighter squadrons. And they did the same to the Japanese. They did the same to the Germans. So everybody was going nuts because the Americans were blaming the Germans were blaming the Japanese were blaming the Americans, and back and forth, this one, for the whole war. And after the war ended, these things disappeared. They just were not there anymore. But there are photographs taken from bombers, B-17s, over Germany. And you can see a whole flock of these things there. You have photographs from Japan, from Japanese fighter pilots over Guam during a strafing run that were being followed by these orbs. And they got the hell out of Dodge because they thought it was some kind of new secret American weapon that was being used against them. So they've been around for a very, very long time, not only up in the sky, but on the ground, in homes, on streets. A case I investigated from out in Oregon was just amazing to me because the gentleman, and I don't know if I talked about this guy before, but the gentleman has a health issue. He's really bad epileptic seizures, so he can't work, but his medicine controls to a point. And he's out cutting his lawn. And the street he lives on, which is very easy to explain, is there's a T intersection. On one side of the road is a farmland with a clump of trees out in the middle of nowhere. And then on the other side of this T road is the road that goes up to his house. There's homes on both sides. Goes back just a couple of blocks. And just single dwellings, no big deal. And that's it. It's a roundy round. You go in one way, you come out the same way. So he's cutting his grass, and he sees this bright sliver of light, which he described as saucer-shaped, but he said not in the conventional name of a saucer. And he said it just slowly came down and went behind the trees. So then, as he's watching it, he said it just slowly comes back up, and off it goes into the sky. It just disappears. Whoosh, gone. Now, as he's trying to get his act together, out from behind the trees comes this brilliant light orb, and that's how he described it, as a brilliant light. He said it comes meandering across the field, like nothing's going on. It's only about 3-4 foot above the ground. It goes over the fence, across the road, comes up the road. By this time, every dog in the neighborhood is going absolutely bonkers. A German Shepherd across the street, which never barked at anybody or anything, has now pulled his dog box, which he's chained to, off of its foundation. And he's halfway out to the street. Other neighbors that are out working in the yard are witnessing this also, where it comes up the street, it passes by him where he said, I could have reached out and touched it. In size, it was about the size of an adult's beach ball. He said inside it looked like a lava lamp from the 60s. And I know what they look like. I have one on my desk. And he said there were just like little discharges of, looked like electricity from all around the whole ball. It hovered over a sewage plate, a drain plate in the middle of the street for a little bit. It went up a little higher, went over to an electric pole there, hung on to that for a little bit, and there was kind of a little electrical discharge, came back over the plate again, and vanished. Now, other investigators came to the scene 2 weeks later. I'm not going to mention any names because I'll get in trouble. But they come to the scene. They take a picture of the trees. They take a picture of the street. And listen to his story, talk to a couple neighbors, see where the dog was going bananas, and they left. Now, the first thing I would have done was I wanted his clothing. I would have bought the guy a tuxedo and gave him $500 cash to spend on clothing just to get the clothes he was wearing. He was sick for 3 days after that. I mean, violently sick. Not seizure-wise, but, vomiting and chills and headaches. And no samples were taken of the plate that had hovered over or the pole, and they could have gotten good samples that weren't corrupted by just walking up the street to the next manhole, which it never got to, or the next pole. And to this day, he describes it. I've talked to him a number of times. He describes it the same way every time. He said it's in my mind. He said He said if I was an artist, I could draw you exactly what I saw. He said as far as size, he said I was right on. He said I went and got a beach ball and blew it up, and he said if I'm off only an inch or two. And so orbs that are interactive, whether they were the Foo Fighters back in the 40s or current sightings, where they come in very close contact, either over a home or within this guy's reach, we just have no idea what they are. Now, I've heard people say they're scout ships and they're this and they're that, and they're owned by the government and they're just spying on people, and well, who knows? That's like when people ask me who's flying those things up there. How would I know? I don't know. I don't got a clue. Well, I know that shouldn't be there, and we don't have anything to do what they're doing. But it's just, orbs it's just a whole nother realm. It should be taken out of ufology and paranormal and cryptozoology and everything else and put in a classification by itself, because all the reports are different. You may get, out of 10, you may get 2 that are similar, but almost all of them are different. They're either different in color, size, shape. Some are oval, most are round. Some have a discharge off them. Some have an aura around them of a different color. Some vanish. Some go straight up in the sky and then drop to the ground. Some look like they come from the ground up to the sky. So, you can almost write a book or at least a paper on orbs, because they're all different, and they're seen in ufology, they're seen in the paranormal, and they're even seen in cryptozoology when people are out looking for Bigfoot or whoever they're looking for out there. They'll see these orbs going through the trees. They'll see bright flashes of light that'll turn into an orb and then disappear. So it's like I said, it's kind of what your belief system is, that where you want to go with it. But there's been very little study on orbs. I mean, for as much as they've been talked about over all these years, the amount of study that's been done on orbs probably wouldn't fill an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
Shar has a question in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker to a comment that you made earlier in regarding Bigfoot. She says she has heard the government doesn't want real Bigfoot because forests would then have to be saved for an endangered species. What's your opinion on this?
Well, I'm going to clue Shar in on something we have here in Pennsylvania. We have an area here in Pennsylvania called the Quahana Wild Area. You can look it up on the internet. Quehana, Quahana Wild Area. You will see a map that shows you this enormous, thousands and thousands of acres of prime woodland. It's the largest white birch forest we have here in Pennsylvania. It also has the largest deer herd. It also has elk and pretty much everything else. Smack dab in the middle, you're going to see a octagon-shaped red circle, octagon rather, that says restricted area. You want to guess what's in that restricted area, or was? It's not there anymore, but it was at one time, from the 60s up until the late 90s. A reactor, a nuclear reactor. What the hell's a nuclear reactor doing inside of a state game land? It was put there to develop nuclear engines for private aircraft, like your local little Cessna 182 or your little Beechcraft or whatever, nuclear-powered engines. And it failed. It's very large. It's extremely large. It's still restricted till this day. It's still radioactive. And the reason it was shut down is because when they just couldn't produce this particular engine, which was Piper that was doing it in conjunction with Wright aircraft, they closed it down. Then somebody else bought it to some kind of medical research, and that shut down. And then what happened was it just became a restricted area, and it's still, till this day, it's all blocked off and all the roads are closed. And when you look at it on the map or look at it on Google, it is huge. For all the Bigfoot sightings we have around that area, all around that area, we have yet to find one Bigfoot sighting within that area of that park. Somebody said, well, maybe these creatures are manufactured. Well, look, back in before World War II, as a matter of fact, the Nazis experimented with trying to build super soldiers using humans and apes. I mean, they tried that for 2 years before they gave up on it. So, keeping an open mind, who's to say that this Guajana project was not what it was told us it was? And maybe these bipedal canines that we're chasing around in that exact same area came from there. I mean, that's a stretch. That's a real stretch. But when a group goes out hunting Bigfoot in that area, and yes, Eric M., you are right. It was the USSR. I'm sorry, I said Germans. It was actually the Russians. And this group doing their thing, just walking down the road close to this area, is met in the middle of the road of a guy who walks out onto the road wearing full combat gear, night vision goggles, carrying an M4 rifle, which is the current version, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this guy's dressed for combat. He's got everything he needs, earpiece, radios, he's got the whole works. Looks at them startled. They look at him startled because who expects to run into a guy like this in the middle of the night out in the middle of nowhere? And he looks at him, he says, "Evening, I'm just out hunting some bear." Turns around, walks back into the woods. They never say a word to him. So they walk down a few feet to see where he walked in, and they don't see him. There is no military bases near that area. None. Zero. Nada. And there's only like one road, it's called Reactor Road, one road in, one road out. Everything else is blocked off with steel gates. So what are we to make of that?
I have no idea. I love it when you tell that story because it gives me the heebie-jeebies every time. Every time.
Same thing with me. I mean, it's just, you know, I was watching the chat room where they were talking about the Mount St. Helens thing. You know, there are enough witnesses to that over the years that have said that actually happened, where they removed a Bigfoot from the Mount St. Helens area. And it is, some of this stuff is just so bizarre and so outlandish that it almost makes you think it's got to be real. Nobody could make this story up. I mean, Star Wars movie wasn't this good. I mean, you know, it's and the more you dig into it, and when you run into these roadblocks, like, well, we just closed it down because, you know, the state of Pennsylvania didn't want to renew its license because they didn't feel that they should have this reactor in the middle of this thing, you know, in the middle of this game lands and blah, 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 blah. Well, they're the ones that put it in there to begin with, in the 60s. And, 70s and, 80s, 90s, it didn't close they didn't pull the license on it till 1998, I believe, or 1997. It's nuts. And then Bigfoot sightings all around it. I mean, over the years, just tons of them, but not in that area. Nothing in that area. Not a sighting, not a report, nothing. Zero, nada. End of story. So, what's running around out there? Could it be? Yeah, it could be. The story of the guy down in Maryland, a longtime researcher who is fishing along a creek, looks across the creek, and he's looking at what he thinks is Bigfoot with a human-looking face. He goes back to his car, which isn't too far away. By the time he gets back to the car to call the police are on the scene. The state police are on the scene. He's trying to explain to them what he saw, and they're telling him to get the hell out of the area. So he takes off. And then he relates a little later on in the story where there was it was some kind of a manufacturing building or something that was taken over by the government, the local government, for a local county prison to do the laundry there. Well, he said that was awful strange because the people working there were not inmates. These were just people that lived in town that were doing the laundry. But this place had like super duper fencing and concertina wire and the whole 9 yards, floodlights. It was just like an armed fort. And over time, during his investigation, he got to talk to a delivery driver who got in to make a delivery, and there was nobody there to take him in, so he started walking around. And next thing you know, he was accosted by, an armed guard who said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm just here to make a delivery, and there's nobody up front." So I said, "Well, okay, you got to get out of here now." And then they're walking up through, and he can see this door, very heavy steel door, which is all pushed out, dented out, like something inside was trying to get out. And he said to the guy, says, "What the hell was in there that wanted out?" And he said, "You don't want to know. Just leave. Get your stuff and leave." So who knows what's going on? I mean, there are just too many weird things going on all over the country, not just here in Pennsylvania. It's everywhere. People are seeing stuff that a researcher from Oklahoma that was up here in Pennsylvania a little while back. They were doing research on an area, and he went down to fill a canteen at the creek. And across the creek, he's staring at what he described as a Bigfoot-like creature, but with a totally human face. Would have looked like anybody else you would have passed in the library or on the street. And he had a sidearm, and he said, "I just couldn't do it." He said it was human. And he said, just stood up, turned around, and lumbered off down following the creek and then off into the woods.
How much do you think that has to deal with, Butch, of the secrets that are maybe happening at Wright-Patterson? Because we hear of so many weird and strange creatures that are coming out of Ohio. Then you look at right next door in West Virginia, okay, the Mothman and all the prophecies that went along with that in the 60s. Do you think that these are, and I know it's a hypothetical question here, okay, but do you think that they are some sort of government program of trying to hybridize humans with animals, or do you think that this whole area is just screwed up with some sort of interdimensional portals into different times and places and maybe even distant planets?
Dave, it could be all of the above. It could be all of the above. I mean, when you look at these reports, like the one, the Kohana area, or you look at the reports of stuff that is running around out there in West Virginia and Ohio, and, you just can't put your finger on when it started, because I found newspaper reports from 1868 of a bipedal canine, the exact description of what we're looking for, in 1868. So have they been here a long time, or have they just seem to be the oldest ones, and newer ones have popped up over time, like the Mothman and the prophecies and the whatever kind of man they got out there now. And there's always something new. But one of the names that comes up all the time, almost all the time, no matter what you're looking at, with the exception of paranormal, is Wright-Patterson. Now, the people that came to develop these engines in the middle of Pennsylvania, these nuclear engines for small aircraft, came from Wright-Patterson.
That place is messed up. That's all I can say. It is messed up. And I know I've told this story. I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you, but I know I've mentioned it on the show a number of times. I had a gentleman on named Jim Thomas, who's an ET experiencer, and he's been on the show a couple of times, including when a gentleman named Rob Mercer from the Miami Valley UFO Society in Ohio was helping him out. And actually, while we were on the show and Jim was listening in, he goes to his kitchen to grab something to eat and looks in the reflection of his mirror, and there's a gray standing there at his window, so he immediately called in and joined the conversation. Anyways, Jim's a retired firefighter, and he has friends who were firefighters at Wright-Pat because they are civilian. And those firefighters have been told, and they've signed an order that basically says that if there are certain buildings burning at Wright-Pat, they are legally not allowed to go in and rescue anybody or save anything. Do not put the fire out, just let it burn to the ground. That's scary. Wow. I had a couple folks in the room here asking what the bipedal is. What we're looking for, we got our first report in November 2014, and we have 20 reports up to date. This is the exact description from everybody that's seen this thing. 8 to 10 foot tall, massive chest, thin-waisted, very heavy-legged, hocked legs like a dog, long arms with hands and claws, massive wolf-like head, glowing yellow eyes, and it shows no fear. It's been accosted by gentlemen on 2 occasions that had weapons in their hand, and the only thing that they felt, that everybody felt, that has come in contact with this creature is we need to leave or something very, very bad is going to happen. And we've gotten that from everybody. It's always seen in heavily wooded state park areas where we have 5,700 acres, 6,800 acres, 9,300 acres, and every description is alike. There's no deviation. It does not meet the dogman description, which is much smaller, seen on all fours, has paws, has a dog-like head, somewhat fluffy fur, long fluffy tails, floppy ears. This has very short pointed ears. And that's what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. Didn't know what to call it. I wasn't going to call it Dogman. I wasn't going to call it a werewolf. I don't think lycanthropy has anything to do with this. I think this is a creature of its own. In my best guess of all the stuff I've read and studied for the last 2+ years on this thing, it's a relic. It's been around for a long, long time. It's been here forever. And people say, well, could it be a skinwalker? Well, look, Pennsylvania, up until 1754, had no white men. There were no white men here. This was Indian territory, all Indian territory. We had 7 different tribes, and they were all at war with each other. And although there are good skinwalkers and bad skinwalkers, a good skinwalker would be the one that would protect Indian burial grounds. So could we be dealing with that? It has not hurt anybody. We found no reports of missing people or injuries caused by this thing. But it, in 2 instances, has come up to within 10 feet of people.
The one that was the best one was the guy taking his shotgun for a walk, basically, on a Sunday afternoon, and up through one of the game areas, and was walking alongside a swamp. And mountain laurel, here in Pennsylvania, mountain laurel doesn't have any bushes on it until it gets about 3 or 4 foot in the air, and then it's all bushy. It's one big bush. And he was coming up on this patch of mountain laurel, which was on a little slope. And as he passed it, he stopped, like something was watching him, and he started turning around, looking around the swamp. He didn't see anything. Then he looked over his shoulder, and which would have put him on the lower trail looking at the base of this mountain laurel, and he saw these two massive hawk-legged, short black-haired legs. As he looked up, he could only see it from the shoulders up. He was looking at this massive wolf head, glowing yellow eyes, fanged. He didn't see the rest of the body except from like the calves down and from the shoulders up. It locked on his eyes. It never took his eyes off him. He never took its eyes off that creature. He's got a 12 gauge in his hand, and he said the very last thing in my mind was to raise that weapon. He said, I backed out, never took my eyes off it, and it never took its eyes off him. And so that's what we've been looking for. We've had one expedition, and now we're going out and meeting and viewing the areas of research that we'll be hitting with the next expedition, and talking to the witnesses first on and seeing if what they said could happen actually could happen, in the terrain they described and all that stuff. But that's what our bipedal canine is.
I would like to ask you, and I'd like to go in a direction that I haven't gone with you before. A lot of people who I deal with on a daily basis, Butch, they listen to this show and other shows like it because they want to learn about their own experiences. I would say very few people actually have just a mild curiosity and they've never experienced anything. But for the most part, people in one way or another who listen to shows like this are experiencers one way or another. How would you explain to someone how to make a report and how they should go about trying to make a report? Because there are so many investigative groups out there. There are people who believe that MUFON's not the answer, that there are people who swear by MUFON. There's, hundreds, if not thousands, of now Sasquatch hunters, and let's face it, there's tens of thousands of paranormal teams in North America alone. How would you address someone in order to make a report?
Well, the first thing is to mentally document what they're seeing. If you see something and you just take a glance at it and you run away, and that might be a good thing to do in some circumstance. But once you... Guy just told me to take a long box of milk bone.
Yes.
It needs to be documented. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you're not in any harm. Try not to antagonize anything you come across. As I say, with the size of these things, I think if you'd shoot it, you'd probably just piss it off. So write down everything, how you felt, what you saw, the area, describe the area, what you were doing there, what time of day, what the weather was like. I mean, everything you can think of, no matter how silly it sounds. We had a lady during a full moon who just went out to look out her door and just look at how bright a moon it was, and she has a pond in front of her house, and, well, guess what's standing at the edge of the pond looking into the pond? Our bipedal. She describes it to a T. Now, some people would say, well, she probably got it off your shows or, this, that, or one of your reports, and I'm going like, we don't give exact locations. That's number one. And number two, this lady doesn't have internet. She doesn't have a computer. She has a cell phone, an old flip phone. That's it. She has no internet connections whatsoever. And I tested that when we were up at the house. I tried to do that from the computers in the truck and from my cell phone. And I got no internet connection up there. She's in the middle of nowhere. She watched it for over 10 minutes, and it just stood there. She described it to a T. She never saw it head on. She saw it from the side, and it just kept staring into the pond. So why was it staring into the pond? Was it, maybe it never saw itself before. I mean, the pond is just a pond. It's not like waves of water. It's a nice shiny pond on a nice bright moonlight. Don't know. But I always tell people, write down everything. And put it on a tape. If you got a tape recorder, do anything you got to do. If it's worrying you and it's worth seeing what you saw and trying to find out what you saw, then you should take the time to just get it down. Write it all down, everything, every little bit. Don't go out looking for it. I don't think this thing is very friendly. Let's put it that way, because number one, it shows no fear. In every case that it's been seen head on or within a distance, it does not run. It will not run. It's never ran away from anybody. Where with dogmen, they're seen, digging in the local restaurant trash cans. They're seen run up and down the street. They're seen in parks. They're seen in parking lots. They're seen at the local 7-Eleven. These things are never seen outside a state park, ever. We have no reports of them ever being outside the state parks. So, and these parks are so heavily wooded, I just can't even explain how heavily wooded they are, where, if somebody walks 5 foot in front of you, you can't see them anymore. They're gone. And these parks, there's so much trees and so many trees in there. They're black. Even in the daytime, you look into the woods, it's black. It's like midnight. So I would say the best, when they're making out their report, don't sit there and talk to Aunt Melly about it for 2 hours. Go grab a paper and a pen and sit down by yourself and write down exactly what you saw. Describe it the best way you can. And whatever area you live in, get that report to them, or with you guys now with this new report thing you're going to set up, have them send it to you. You'll know who to send it to. Right now, we don't have any place in the country that are coming up with these reports of this particular bipedal canine. Oh, we have reports of werewolves, of course. We have reports of Bigfoot. We have reports of flying pterodactyls and every other thing you can think of. But nowhere do we have any reports of this type of creature.
Watchdog is asking in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker if anyone has a good picture or video of the Dogman or this bipedal creature.
Dogman, I can't speak to because we haven't had any of those reports. I know there's a bunch of pictures out there. I don't know how good they are. Our thing is, look, it's us versus him, whatever it is. On his side of the playing table, he has stealth. He could be standing there looking at you, you wouldn't know it. The only thing we have on our side is technology. So when we get to these areas, it's setting up of high-speed surveillance cameras, digital video, digital cameras, infrared cameras, and we have thermal imaging devices and cameras. Setting them all up in that area and covering more than what we should be in perchance, and just letting them run and see what happens, see what we can get. I had one guy say, well, why don't you bait it? Well, what am I going to bait it with? And then another guy says, well, why don't you just go in looking for it? Well, where do I start in 6,800 acres? Where it was last seen? Do you know how long it would take me to run through 6,800 acres? I'm 70 years old. I'll be long dead and buried before I even get past the first 2 miles. It's nothing but rocks and hills, and I mean, it's a very, it's not a very habitable area you'd want to be marching around in all day. And and I'll answer Shar here in a minute. You have an unknown creature that up until November 2014 has never been reported in this state, except for a newspaper clipping found from 1868 where it describes the exact same creature. So, like I said, that's the only thing I can do is hope to get a picture. I don't think I'm going to be lucky enough to do a face-on-face with it. We do take protection. It's not like we're going out there unarmed. But then again, I'm not out there to kill it either. So the stuff we have is kind of sophisticated, non-lethal stuff, which is in weapons form, but it's non-lethal. And I think that's the best we're going to be able to do. Can't trap it. Don't even know where it's at. I mean, but it stays within that loop. So we get one call at the bottom of the loop, and maybe 2 weeks or so later we get one in the middle of the loop, then we'll get one back at the bottom of the loop, then we get one over to the left-hand side of the loop, then we get one at the top of the loop. My best guess, it's the same creature. It's not more, it's one. It's not 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. It's one. And it stays in that loop for whatever reason. I have got a clue, other than the fact that if you wanted to hide there, nobody would ever find you. Nobody. I mean, when you combine all the acreage together, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres of very heavily wooded land with very little population. Most of those towns, they got a diner, a gas station, a local garage, a small car dealer, and a beauty shop. That's it. You're done. You're out of town. They don't have police up there. State police handle everything in that whole area. And yes, Eric, it could be related to Rougarou.
Char's question, Butch. What's the difference between the werewolf and a bipedal? Okay. Werewolves go back to Roman times. Romulus and Remus was the start. And up until the 17th century, werewolves were pretty much used by mostly the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches, and also rulers of small countries, areas within a country. And what they would do was they would take the local Catholic Church wanted more membership, and they got this group over in this little hamlet that's all pagan. They do pagan worshiping. They worship dogs, cats, chickens, whatever. And the Catholic Church wants them in there because they want them as members. They want their tax money. They want them into the fold. So what they would do would, the church would hire a maniac, murderer, whatever, promise him all kind of good things, and say, we want you to go in this town, and we want you to just kill 2 or 3 people, but I mean really shred them up, tear them up, rip them up like an animal did it. And they said, okay. So they went and did their thing, collected their 2 pots of silver or whatever they got, and off they'd go. These people would start complaining, and next thing you know, one of the priests would show up and say, aha, you have a man-wolf. We're going to take care of that for you. But you have to become a Catholic. You have to come into the Catholic religion, or Protestant, whoever was doing it at that time. They were the only 2 doing that. And they said, so you come into our fold, we'll send our people in to take care of that. Okay. So they get a hold of the same maniac, and then send him in there. Well, at the same time they send him in there, they send in their army, their guards, whatever they had. And they, of course, would kill the guy and dress him up with a wolf head maybe for a hat and a cape and stuff like that, and drag his butchered body out into the street and say, see, we told you we'd protect you. Well, they just got a guaranteed bunch of people that are going to be showing up every Sunday for Mass. The Protestants caught on, and that's the one I just talked about started in Spain. The Protestants caught on in England, caught on to this little gig, and they started doing the same thing. And before you know it, the Protestants were getting all these little hamlets and villages, which England was abound with all these new members to the church. And eventually they got caught at it, but nothing ever happened because, popes back then were pretty easygoing, so they just went like, no problem. The source for that info is, the book is called The Book of Werewolves, being an account of a terrible superstition, and it's by a gentleman named Sabine, S-A-B-I-N-E, Baring, B-A-R-I-N-G, -Gould, G-O-U-L-D.
And this book was published in 1863.
Wow.
There you go. Everything that I just told you is in this book. Took me a while to find it, but I found it. Anyway, so the difference between a werewolf was that a werewolf was somebody that could change at will, either by a spell cast upon them by a witch, or it was the changing of a moon or the tides, all kind of strange stuff. So around the end of the 16th century, there was a young fellow who would put on a wolf skin, wrap it around his shoulders, and he would run out and chase the young girls of the local town that he lived in. And he was captured. Well, in those days, that was just as bad as being a witch, if you were thought to be a werewolf or a man-wolf. And believe it or not, it's probably the only time it ever happened in the history of this world, a lawyer got him off. They got him in front of the court, and the court was ready to take him out and throw him on the stake and light a match. And the lawyer said, look, this kid is not right in the head. You know, just look at him, ask him questions, and the kid's totally gone. You know, he's off in left field. So he was actually the first convicted werewolf that was placed into a monastery, never to leave again. And he didn't leave. He died in the monastery about 15 years after he got there. But it was then that they came up with the term lycanthrope, which was a person who was mentally ill who believed that they were either possessed or were changed by a witch or by the moon or the tide changes. And lycanthropy is still alive and well today in many parts of Europe. But they also use that same term, lycanthrope, for these folks, children that are born today and they're covered in hair, face. They look like a werewolf. I mean, they're just covered head to body, you know, hair all over the place. The majority of them are in India. I think it's Peshawar or something like that in India. There's like 7 or 8 families of those people. And there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, mentally and physically they're fit. It's just that this condition just grows heavy black hair, male, female, from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet. I mean, they're just covered in hair. They've tried to, electrolysis and all that stuff, and it doesn't work. It grows back just as fast as they get rid of it. So it's actually a physical impairment. But, and yes, Eric, that's where we get the word lunatic.
Eric is our resident scientist around here. So
I like resident scientists. They ask good questions.
Absolutely. I have a great question from Gloria in the SOR Space Travelers. Have you ever used any drones in your search for this bipedal creature or Bigfoot?
No, it would be impossible. The cover, the tree cover wouldn't even allow it. Even when the trees are bare in October and November. I mean, it's so thick. If I had one above my head, it probably wouldn't even see me. And now, starting today, as a matter of fact, or starting yesterday, as a matter of fact, in the state of Pennsylvania, you now have to have a pilot's license to use a drone.
Really? Boy, they take the fun out of everything, don't they?
Yeah, and of course, there's a $400 license fee you must pay, and you've got to be. And I'm not saying a full pilot's license; it's a drone pilot's license, which is given to you by a pilot out at the local airport, and it's just silly, but they get $400 out of you if you want to do it.
Oh, a nice little cash grab, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania's noted for that. I mean, they just raised the tax on cigarettes another $1. They're just crazy.
Well, you know what? It's something that, we could debate all night on the whole tax issue. Try living in Canada, my friend. Try living in Canada. You Americans don't know tax until you've lived north of the border.
I heard that.
Yeah, I can tell you that. It is okay. It is very much okay. We only have about 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes left until we got to go to our final break of the night with you, Butch. There's so many things that are interesting when it comes to this area. And we're going to get into in the next hour about the triangle of Ohio and Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I want to delve into that with you and get your opinion on that in a little bit more detail. You're really in an area where anything can happen. It's much like here in BC. Yes, you have a few more metropolises around, but realistically, are you surprised by the amount of strange activity that happens between those three states?
Yeah, I am, kind of, because when you look at other areas and talking with other researchers, they may have an occasional sighting, more UFO-ish than cryptozoology or paranormal. Pennsylvania right now, last time I checked, we had 469, I believe, paranormal groups in Pennsylvania, and we have another 390 around Pennsylvania that come into Pennsylvania to research, like go to Gettysburg and all the other places. And now that has also shifted out into the middle of Indiana, especially is loaded. And but when you're talking about West Virginia and Pennsylvania, Ohio, I mean, it is just loaded with reports, and there's a definite cutoff. Like if you go Western Ohio, I don't see a lot of reports out of Western Ohio. I see a lot of reports in Eastern Ohio, Southeastern Ohio, and in West Virginia, all of West Virginia, and a lot in Western Pennsylvania and Central Pennsylvania. But then that's where it stops. And you go into Eastern Pennsylvania, there's nothing. So why that triangle or that particular area is so wrought with the reports of all types is just, I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. And it's not always been that way. At one time, it was basically southwestern Pennsylvania. And now it's, that whole area in the western and center. And in Ohio, it was more northern Ohio, and now it seems to be that northern, northeastern and southeastern part of Ohio. And West Virginia at one time, it just seemed to be around the old, around the old coal mining areas. And now it's all of West Virginia, right from one end to the other and all the way across. So what caused that and why, I really have no idea. But it is, it's just a very strange phenomenon that although I'm only chasing one type of entity, and the folks out in western Pennsylvania, maybe 3 or 4 different types of entities, including Bigfoot. And then you got Ohio, which again is, all that and then some, but no bipedals. And then West Virginia, the same thing. West Virginia, more Bigfoot than anything. And it's just, it's weird. It's just, like what I said at the very beginning of the show, we're very busy. And I remember last winter where, I could have ran around out in the woods naked. Nobody would have cared. There was nobody there. Nobody doing anything. Now, everybody's all over the place. I mean, you got these groups, and there aren't a whole lot of groups here in Pennsylvania. I mean, as far as crypto groups, I think there's 2 or 3 in the western part. And, of course, you have Stan Gordon out there who's been doing it a long time. And I just talked to him the other day where he said he's getting a lot of stuff, UFOs, Bigfoot reports, and such. And we've kind of just zeroed in on what we're looking for, and the other stuff I pass on to other groups. But the stuff we're looking at, this bipedal canine, I mean, we're geared for it. We have the boots to put on the ground. We have other groups that are helping us to put boots on the ground. And like I said, we're going to start our second expedition, which will take another 5 off the list. And then there'll be another one right before Christmas, one after Christmas. And that'll clean up, that will be in all those areas, and would have not only talked and seen the location beforehand and talked and photographed locations, talked to witnesses, but then we'll be going back to do a 3 or 4 Go on, Matt.
And on that note, I got to cut you off, boss. We're going to go to commercial here on Spaced Out Radio. Butch Witkowski, Strange Days, right after this.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit's story box. The iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com.
100% radio. Now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Final hour with Butch Witkowski, Strange Days. We do it the final Monday of every month. Good to have you all with us tonight. Remember, if you're an SOR space traveler, your password is idiosyncratic, set by Bill Cardwell in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Idiosyncratic is your password, so make sure you use it wisely. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio tonight, we appreciate you taking the time. Remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station funded by you, the valued listener. So do us a favor and donate today. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's only $5 a month. You can also read up on the SOR Space Wire, my latest blog on depression and anxiety and what the show helps me with. Give me a comment on there if you want as well. I'm curious to see what you say. And, of course, all of our music is provided by the guitar legend Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. Click on the Bumblefoot banner to learn more. Tomorrow night on the show, Andrea Message will be with us. The Paranormal Ronin will be talking ghosts, creepy crawlies, and so much more. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. For the final time tonight, we introduce Butch Witkowski from UFOcop.com. And, of course, this is his monthly performance of Strange Days. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure. I want to focus here for the next little bit, if you don't mind, on, and we touched on it in the last half hour, about people filing reports. In your opinion, you've now been doing this type of investigation for 27 years plus. Is there... I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how do people do it? Because there's so much untrustworthy information in groups out there. There's good ones. Let's not focus on the negative. There are good groups out there, but there's so many. How does someone pick the right group in order to file their UFO sighting or their cryptid sighting or their paranormal experience, in your opinion?
Well, I would look for the groups that have been around the longest. I mean, if I was going to make a UFO report in Ohio, I'd go with the Cleveland UFO group, only because they are the oldest group in the United States. They've been in effect since 1959, and they have a lot of the same members they started with. If I was going to do a paranormal report, I would really look around again for the oldest groups. There's one in Sinking Spring, Pennsylvania, Ghost Hunters, Inc. They've been around since 1979, I believe. So the older groups that have gone through the, how do I want to say this, have gone through the drama stage where, you know, nobody's getting along with each other. You got more reports than I got, all that stuff. Always look for the older groups that have been around for a while. Larger groups are not necessarily the best groups. Sometimes a team of 4 is going to be your best bet over a team that may have 24. But again, it's the older groups that, I lean on a lot when I have a question, because just the fact that it's been around for such a long time and they're all the same people, and they're just the ones that I would put my shot at first.
And the reason why I asked that, and I mentioned earlier, we are going to be starting a report section at spacedoutradio.com for anyone and everyone to send their reports, and we're going to investigate them and then turn them over to who we feel the groups are best to deal with them on a private level, so that way people know whom they can trust. Do you find that when people put that information out there, they may try one or two, not get the results that they want, because, let's face it, you have a weird experience, a paranormal type experience, you want to discuss it because it's the only thing you can think about. And yet, a lot of people get discouraged by that, and I would say, and maybe you'll concur, that only 1 out of every, 25, 30 reports maybe gets actually reported?
Oh, absolutely. And then you have the other thing where I call them skippers, and they'll contact the paranormal group in their area, and they'll make the report. Well, if they don't get the result from them they were looking for, then they jump to another group. Before you know it, there's 6 or 7 groups looking at the same report. Some may be out actually in step investigating it. Maybe 1 or 2 wrote it off, or a couple didn't do anything at all with it. And what I would say to the folks that are going to make a report, once you find the individuals that you want to handle that report, stay with them. Do not put a report in with me and then turn around and put a report in with some ghost hunter down in Texas. It happens a lot, and one of the things that we've done since day one is if there's somebody else, if somebody calls me and said, well, I sent a case over to such and such, a UFO case, and I don't think they're doing a good job. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to get involved. You gave it to them, let them run it out. I don't want to be accused of swiping somebody's report, and that's just the way it is. And most, if not all, most good groups will do that. They will not get involved in another thing unless they're asked to. Like if the ghost hunters guys down there in Sinking Spring, Pennsylvania, called me and said, hey, we got a UFO report, can you give us a hand with it? Absolutely. No question. I'd do the same thing if I had a paranormal report I needed help with. But I would not take the report over and say, okay, just give me the report and I'll handle it. I wouldn't do that.
I remember when a gentleman, and I'm going to leave his name out of it, he contacted myself and the crypto guru Ronald Murphy, who also is on this show. He contacted Ron after his coast-to-coast appearance on ferries, and this gentleman was calling from Canada or messaging from Canada saying, I have ferry activity, I have really good information and photography, and I've actually got a body of a ferry. So Ron and I got in contact with him, and we were debating whether or not to bring him on the show. And we told him point blank, if you want people to take you seriously in this field, the less you start spreading the word that this is the information you have, the better it will be for you. And Ronald was planning on traveling up to that part of Canada. I had a team of paranormal investigators called Chronicles of the Unknown who were planning on traveling over there to get footage to see what it was all about. And the next thing you know, this gentleman didn't take our word at all in regards to trying to keep it a little bit hush. And we weren't doing that for selfish reasons. We were doing that to protect him because he had no idea what this field is like. The egos involved, the sensationalists that are out there. And the next thing, exactly. And the next thing you know, as we are keeping quiet, I start getting messages, and Ron starts getting messages. Hey, have you talked to the guy up in Canada who has all this fairy footage? Well, you have to back away, just like you said. You have to back away because the next thing you know, you're going to get involved. And when you're trying to build and maintain, especially, a quality reputation in this field, which I'm thankful Spaced Out Radio has, and I know the crypto guru is very thankful that he is gaining that respected reputation as well. You can't get involved with people who are basically shopping their material, because my first instinct is, it's not real now. It's not real.
Exactly.
And if you're wanting to take it all over the place, how do I know that this is real now? And it could very well be. The guy just wanted some answers. I mean, a humble guy has never really experienced anything weird except, he had fairies all over the place. And he sent me photos. He had some incredible photos of fairies. But when you're shopping your own stuff, and you're just not going to get that respect. And now, I don't think there's many people, if any, in the field who are chatting with him. Because he went and did it the wrong way. He did everything that we asked him to do and did the exact polar opposite of what we asked him to do. And now he'll probably never get the answers that he wants. And it's sad.
But it happens all the time. I mean, when we take on a case, the folks are told right up front, we don't mention your name, we don't give your location. We may give a general county area, like say, okay, so this took place in Erie County. Well, Erie County is a big place. And that's it. That's all we put out. We'll put out a little bit about, we won't put out everything. I have never in one report ever put out everything we know. Never. Because when somebody hijacks it, which usually happens every now and then, and you read about it in their book, and you're going like, wait a minute, that's my case. And then you say, well, yeah, that much happened, but you don't know what else we got. So, and I tell that to all investigators, never give up the whole story to anybody. That's yours to investigate. You're doing the legwork on it. You're the one that's advising the client that what you're doing. And somebody just put a real good a thing up on there. I think it was Eric. Eric says, run from groups that charge money. Absolutely. There is no group that I know of that's worth a salt that will charge you a dime. Now, if you're calling a group from Ohio to come into Pennsylvania or vice versa, they may request gas or toll money. That's just pretty much the gamut. But other than that, if they want to charge you by the hour or to come out and take a look or anything like that, just hang up the phone, call somebody else, get a hold of somebody else. And I've always put this out too. Like, if you can't find somebody in your area, you can email me. You can do that right off my website. And if you need somebody in your area, and I know there's somebody good in the area, I will give you the information on how to contact them. But that's as far as I'll go. I'm not going to get involved in your investigation. And It's a shame. I mean, I've heard some real horror stories already. There was a lady down in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, thought her house was haunted. She just bought the place and somebody died in it or something. I don't know what the whole story was anymore. And she called a paranormal group, and they said, yeah, we'll come out. Well, we charge $300 for the first hour and $100 for every hour after that. Well, she didn't know any different, so she paid them. They were out. They spent 5 hours at the house, so you do the math, and they never came back again.
Nice. Good people.
Yeah, real good people.
Good quality people. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and if you don't want to answer this, I can fully understand. You were part of MUFON.
Correct.
There is a lot of people who are hesitant about MUFON, especially when Robert Bigelow got involved.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people who say MUFON is infiltrated by government sources. Would you recommend anybody who has a UFO or ET contact to contact MUFON?
I will say this. Although there are some excellent people in MUFON that know what they're doing, they've been at it a long, long time. You can't blame them for the organization. I mean, they don't run it. They don't make up the rules. Again, with them, it's I really don't know how to say it. I know so many of them over the years that, I mean, they're very good at what they do. They're very conscientious, and again, if somebody would have that issue, they wanted to make a report to MUFON, go to the local meeting. They all have meetings. They all have monthly meetings. Some have bi-monthly, but go to the meeting, listen to what they're talking about. If you feel comfortable, you don't have to tell them the whole story, but you'll get the feeling right away whether they're interested or not. I mean, I've had people go to MUFON and, they told a little bit of their story and, they were all over it. I mean, they really wanted part of it and, they were all involved in it and this, that, and the other thing. But that's a tough one because, like I said, there are a lot of good investigators in MUFON, and I mean a lot. And then there are some that are not so great. The old fortune and glory thing. But it is, I don't know, it's a toss-up. I mean, I pretty much know a good researcher out of every state with MUFON in this country. So, I mean, if I can help anybody out, push them towards something like that, there's no problem with me doing that. And but I understand how people feel. I mean, MUFON charges to join, MUFON charges for this, charges to be an investigator, charges this, I mean, there's a lot of charges, but it's an organization that is very large. I don't know what their membership is now anymore. It goes up and down all the time, but sometimes these MUFON locations are not even close. They're out in the middle of nowhere, or they're in a big city where nobody even lives close to. I would look, before I'd even do that, I mean, look around. I mean, you know a lot of good people. I know a lot of good people. I mean, a lot of people that have been on your show know a lot of good people out there. And, I'd be more than happy to put anybody in the right direction as to if they wanted to make a report to MUFON. And you're right. When Bigelow was involved and all that mess was going on, I mean, MUFON's trust factor went from top to bottom in a millisecond. And, I mean, I left because I wasn't getting the answers. I mean, I didn't have a problem with what they were doing. I just had this thing where I just wasn't getting the answers. I mean, it was more, even though I was a STAR team member and all that stuff and chief investigator, I just thought there was another way I could do it, which I did by just getting a bunch of investigators together that I knew, and instead of working through a group of folks before I could do anything, I mean, I was making that decision now, and a lot of people that belong to U4COP are current or former MUFON members. And I trust them explicitly. They know what they're doing. They know how to do the job, and they're right there. But it's a tough question because, you know, they have so many ups and downs. Like one time they're like a shining star, and the next day they're like a falling star. There's always something going on. There's always some kind of drama, whether it's between state directors and members, or members and assistant state directors. It's always something. And they've branched out. I know they've branched out into cryptozoology now. They've branched out into abduction scenarios and stuff like that. But what can I say? MUFON's MUFON. You know, they've been there since 1969. So, but they're a large group, and you know, sometimes in a large group you get lost.
Well, and I think for a lot of members whom I have chatted with, I'll tell you, I have nothing against MUFON personally. I've met some very, very good people who are involved, much like you. But there's a lot of people who just want that MUFON title.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the title means nothing to me. It means nothing, and it shouldn't mean anything to anybody who has an experience. Just because someone says they're from MUFON doesn't mean they know what the heck they are doing. You know what I'm saying? And, and I think that's the problem when you get with these groups. I mean, just because you pay a fee to join MUFON or any other group doesn't mean that you are an investigator. It doesn't mean that you are someone who is qualified to be doing investigations. Instead of throwing everybody in the same mud puddle and saying, okay, don't get dirty.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, it's I know one gentleman, he didn't last but 2 months with MUFON. And when I met the guy, and I talked to him personally, and I thought, this guy isn't going to last but a month. Well, I was wrong. He lasted 2 months. Just talking to the guy for 5 minutes, this guy couldn't find his ass with both hands, let alone anything else. I mean, he had no background in it. He had no common sense as far as doing an investigation. I don't know if he ever did take his test, but you know, there's so many good researchers out there, and like I said, there's some in MUFON, but there's so many good researchers. Some are prior MUFON, some never even heard of MUFON, but they are out there, and you know, I'll point anybody to the right person if they need it.
I'm surprised a group the size of MUFON doesn't teach their people how to speak with the media. That's the one that I'm blown away with. And that's where I have a little bit of troubles in trust. I remember I brought on one MUFON member, and longtime listeners of this show would totally remember this show because they were begging me to get this person off the air. Begging me. And I figured, you know what? I've gone this far. You know, we got to make a show out of it. You know, and this person, she said she was the top researcher in this one big UFO case. And I don't want to say the state because, I mean, this goes into archives and I don't want to embarrass this person or anything like that. Right? But she stated that she was the top researcher of this giant UFO case in her state. And when I got her on the air, she couldn't put 4 or 5 words together in a sentence. And she had notes laid out all over her floor. You could hear her, you know, shuffling papers, trying to find notes. She didn't know what the hell she was talking about. And at times, you know, that's a chance you take. When you bring someone on the air, you hope that they are going to be able to bring some top-notch evidence and be able to speak with you, because that's part of their job, is relaying the message to the public. And unfortunately, maybe she had a bad day where she had absolutely froze, but in the end, you can't bring her back on, and that relates into the quality of what MUFON is bringing into the field, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I've heard some reports that were on radio or blog radio, and very well done, very, very precise, very right on the money, you know. And then I've heard a couple that I'm going like, time to go to bed. you know. And unfortunately, there seems to be more of those than the good ones out there right now.
Would you recommend someone to go to more of an independent type group rather than a bigger name group?
Absolutely. They're much easier to find. Like I said, just look for the old ones, the ones that have been around a long time. And I don't mean 2 years, 3 years. I mean, you look for the ones that have been around 10, 12, 6, 8, 10 years. And they tell you what their experience is. Like, you know, they'll tell you that, you know, they got some kind of background in something, whether it's astrophysics or law enforcement or who knows, maybe they were a judge, I don't know, you know, some kind of background where investigation would be a primary function of their job. I mean, these are the guys that know what to do. I mean, they're going to know how to go out there and collect forensic evidence the proper way. They're going to know the chain of command. And, you know, it's just you're going to find that there are a lot of them. I mean, really, from East Coast to West Coast, there's a bunch of them. There's a couple up in Canada, up around in the Quebec area.
Yeah, and Ontario as well.
And Ontario, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing out west here. Besides, I think the closest MUFON would be Washington State or Alaska, and we're connected to 2 here in BC, but that's about it. I have a question coming in from, where is it here? From Steve in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. He is asking, what is your opinion on all of these missing hunters and missing people out there? Do you think they're being taken or they're disappearing on their own volition?
I think it's a little of both. When we were doing first started Bipedal, one of the things I wanted to see was how many missing people in that area. And I found 2. Both were, the one gentleman was really up in age. He was like 89 or 91, something like that. He was out hunting on his own and didn't return that evening, and they found him 3 days later. He had a heart attack and died. And the other gentleman was 45, 50 years old, first time hunting in one of the big forests, and he got lost, and they couldn't find him for over a week, and by the time they found him, he was dehydrated, and he died. Those are the only 2 that I'm aware of in our state. Now, you know, with David Paulides stuff, if everybody's familiar with David Paulides, he does the 411 series. There are a lot of strange cases where folks disappear in the woods, and they're not just hunters. They're hikers. They're families. The one that sticks in my head so much is a young boy is walking with his father and his mother and sister. He's up in front of the pack by just a few feet, and he just goes over a little knoll in the road or the hill that they were on, and he's never been seen again. So where'd he go? Now, had he been grabbed by a predator, mountain lion or anything in that line, there would have been at least some signs of blood. There would have been maybe piece of clothing or the backpack he was wearing. I mean, nothing was ever found to him. I mean, they don't find anything. And then you have the ones where people disappear, and they're not found for years and years and years, and the body's never found, but they'll find the clothing up on the top of a mountain somewhere, and the clothing all be folded neatly. The shoes will be just like it's in somebody's room. You know, everything's folded, and the shoes are lined up side by side, but no body. So what are we talking about now? Are we talking about something in the woods that's taken them, or surely if it would have been a mountain lion or a bear or anything like that, you would find the body. I mean, people that get attacked by bears, whether here in Canada or any place else, I mean, they always find a body. Of course, it don't look too good, but they always find it. But these are people that just disappear. They're not there anymore. And, you know, then that takes you to the thought of abduction, where, you know, you have X number of people every year missing off in the United States anyway. That totals up, you know, in 6-figure numbers every year that are never found. That's men, women, children. I mean, they're gone. There's nothing ever found of them. No bodies, no clothing, no nothing. They're just disappear from the planet. they're gone. But the ones in the woods, that's another thing. You have people that disappear from campsites. They were there 1 minute, and the next minute they're gone. It's just hard to say. Could it be a predator? Yeah, but I can't imagine that many predator kills in an area.
I always wonder if it's maybe little people.
Possible.
And I have to tell you this, because I haven't told you this story. About 3 weeks ago, I was out walking a trail. We do this hobby called geocaching. And I was walking a trail along a lake by my house. And I had my son in the stroller because he's only 3 and it's a long walk. And I'm pushing him away. And I started walking down this trail. And, because all this stuff always happens out of the corner of your eye, which pisses me off royally. Rarely does it happen when your 2 eyes are actually fixated on something. And I actually swore to myself that I saw about an 18-inch to it wasn't 2 feet, I can guarantee that. But this little, I can't even call it a person. It didn't look like a person. It took 2 or 3 steps onto the trail, saw us coming, and then walked right back in to where it came from. And it was like in a split second. And I'm thinking, something like that, if it got a hold of somebody, or a few of them got a hold, and they're so silent, they could easily take, maybe a person down a hole. Because you don't know how strong they are. They might be small, but they may be, as strong as an ox type of thing. And it was the weirdest thing. I've never seen anything like that before.
You want to check with J.C. Johnson at Four Corners Research. Easy to get him on his Facebook page or web page. He has a picture of one of those.
I'll have to check that out.
Took up in, I believe, either Montana or Wyoming, I think. But little person, kind of not looking like a person, but a little person, with its head poking out of the weeds along a trail. And it was watching them while they were doing what they were doing, which was a Bigfoot investigation. And they got a picture of it. And till this day, I've looked at it 100 times, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell that is. But the picture's on his website. And I would relay that story to him because I know that's pretty much what they're looking at. And there are a lot of things in Colorado and not that area are just amazing with the stuff they're seeing. I mean, they just about a year ago, I guess they saw or photographed a large bird, much larger than a condor. So, not saying it wasn't a condor, but it was much larger than a condor.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody now in the chat rooms is making fun of me because they know I absolutely hate gnomes. I am petrified of gnomes.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
And now they're all like, you had to bring it up, didn't you, Dave? Damn gnomes. So now I'm going to, I didn't even think about this. Now I'm going to get all the harassment from everybody when it comes to the gnomes because I hate those damn little things. They just bug me. I'm not going to lie. But when it comes to the missing people again, you've dealt and you've looked into alien abduction along with mutilations or whatever goes along the topic line.
Yes.
Do you think that these people who are disappearing in the forests that this is maybe a new camouflaged way that UFOs and extraterrestrials are kidnapping people?
It could be. Look at people that find a set of stairs in the middle of the woods. I mean, just a set of steps that go up. Nobody knows who put them there. And it's just like a carpenter went out there and put up a set of steps. Overseas, there have been whole villages that have disappeared, in the bush, where, the soup was still on the stove. The fire was hot. The laundry was hanging out. The toys were laying where the children were playing. And the whole village is gone. So, there's so many mysteries out there that it would consume a dozen lifetimes. Because one thing always leads to another. Like when I was looking into human mutilation, actually I started with cattle mutilation. That took me to human mutilation. Then I wanted to know how many people were actually missing. Then that took me to abduction. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. And so now I sit here in my little office, man cave, whatever you want to call it, surrounded by about 1,500 books and just pages and pages of information, and there's 4 computers going at the same time. And some things I have an answer for, a lot of things I don't. I just don't. I don't know where to go with it. I mean, you'll go so far, and then, it's like you fall down that rabbit hole and you're done. Or you think you got something and you follow up on it, and you may spend months looking at it and documenting and researching and photographs and whatever, buying books and everything, and you find out that it doesn't go anywhere. It just leads you to another rabbit hole.
Yeah, but that's the fun of the research, though, Butch. It is. As frustrating as it is, and I've said this many a times on this show, the minute you open one door in this field, there's another 10 right behind it that you haven't opened yet. And behind those 10, there's another 10 behind each of those 10 doors. It's the never-ending cycle.
Yeah, you ask one question and you get a question in return. You answer that one and you go on and on and on and on and on. And there you are.
I hear you. And it's frustrating.
But it is fun. I got to admit that.
Have there been any... Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it just keeps you alert and keeps your mind open, and that you you look in all directions, You may have the answer on the tip of your tongue, but you don't want to believe yourself. You got to dig further. It's kind of like a punishment.
Have there been any recent human mutilation stories coming out that you've heard of?
Not recent. The last one was... I'll have to think about that one a minute. The last one was in 1974, 78. That was in Beni Mazar, Egypt. It's right outside of Cairo, small town, where 2 families were found mutilated, just like a cow. It would be found mutilated. Every man, woman, child, goat, chicken, whatever they had in the properties was done in the same way. They blamed a gentleman who lived about 30 miles from that town, quite retarded, had the IQ of a 5-year-old, and they pinned the murders on him, probably because they couldn't find anybody else, or they didn't want to get anybody upset. And he eventually was found not guilty. I talked to his attorney. He was eventually found not guilty when he did go to trial. And the attorney, really nice lady, she said, till this day, court ordered, he can only leave the house with a police escort, whether he's going to the mosque or he's going shopping or he's just going for a walk. There's got to be a police officer there. So, although they never blamed it on anything extraterrestrial, they never blamed it on anything terrestrial either. They just put the story out that this was the guy, and he's the one we're going to stick with. But there was no murder weapon ever found. There was, when you look at these mutilations, when you look at a cattle mute, there is no weapon. These holes are perfectly cut, and how stuff is removed is just. I've taken stuff to forensic pathologists and say, could you do this? And they're going like, what are you, nuts? To take the udders off a cow without damaging any of the stomachs. He said, that's impossible. You're going to nick or scratch something. He says, nobody's got that steady hand to make that perfect a cut. And I said, well, what about a laser? He said, to do that, he says, that laser would be the size of a small truck. And he said, I don't think so. So, who's doing it? Yeah, I'm pretty much sure that's nobody on this planet that's doing it. Why they're doing it, I haven't got a clue. Although there is a researcher in Puerto Rico that has a pretty good idea. He thinks endorphins may be involved, where they need these endorphins for something. Now, what, he doesn't know. Could it help them in our atmosphere? Could it be something that they have to put into their bodies to travel the distances they travel? I guess anything's possible. But when you look at all the parts that are taken from every animal are all the same. There's only one exception to that, which I'll mention in a second here, but all those parts that are taken are very high in endorphins. And everybody has endorphins. Every creature on this planet has endorphins. Now, the only outlier there is, and those reports came 3 years ago, where in England they were finding sheep that were also mutilated, just like our cattle, with one exception. About an inch below the ear, there were 3 holes in the shape of a triangle, and the brain was missing. We've never had any cattle mutilations ever that I can find, or any other cattle researchers can find, where the brain was taken.
I have some questions coming here from the audience in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. Don is asking, how many of these human mutilation stories do you think are actually blamed on killers when really they're not?
The one in Egypt is the only one I'm aware of. All the other ones have been pretty much classified as unknown.
Steve is asking in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, do you think we're food?
I hope not. I'm a big boy. I could feed a lot.
Yeah, me too, man.
I don't know. Like I said with that endorphin thing, maybe that some substance in the endorphins taken could be some kind of supplement. I don't know exactly food, but that's a hard question to answer. But I keep reverting back to that TV program where the guy's getting onto the saucer, and the guy said, "We figured out what that thing is. It's a menu." And he was going for a ride with the aliens.
I'd do that. I'd go for a ride.
We could be. I mean, it could be.
Another question here. This comes from Eric Markham in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. Okay. And he is asking, have you done any research on the Wendigo?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because when we first got involved in this canine, Skinwalker was one of the very first things that came up in the investigation. And, of course, the Navajo have the Wendigo, and we did a lot of research into the Wendigo. And the Wendigo, whether it's the Wendigo or the Comanche wolf tribes that the Skinwalkers are more wolf-like. The Skinwalkers, which Wendigo is, the only difference is the Wendigo becomes a Wendigo through either sex with a corpse, necrophilia, or it eats human flesh. Whereas the Cherokee Skinwalker, to become a Skinwalker, goes through a ceremony and then has to kill a family member or a close relative. And then they on both sides, whether it's Navajo or Cherokee, they become involved in what they call the witchery way. And they can take the shape of any animal. They could be a flea. They could be an eagle. They could be a snake. They could be a wolf. They could be a dog. They can be anything they want to be. Or they can become a human and walk up to you in your camp just to say hello, and you wouldn't know the difference, with a few exceptions. They're constantly sniffing the air like an animal would. They are will never lock on eye contact with you. Their eyes are kind of shifting around all the time like they're watching everything. and they all have one particular characteristics where they have hair. Their hairline doesn't stop at the back of the neck. It continues down below the collar line and down the back. So they'll either have their collar rolled up or they will, have something wrapped around their neck. But the Wendigo is considered way more dangerous because where you will have a male and female skinwalker from Cherokee legend, good and bad, Wendigo is basically male, and there is no good. I mean, they're just pure evil. And till this day, right now, you will never get a Navajo to mention a Wendigo's name, for fear that they'll be killed, or one of their family members will be killed or struck down.
That is eerie indeed. Mm-hmm. Let's switch over to UFO sightings, because we really haven't talked about UFOs much tonight.
Sure.
How is 2016, can you already believe that we are like 8 months into this year? How has it been for UFO sightings in reports for UFO-COP?
In the last 6 months, almost a weekly occurrence where we're getting a report of some sort. It's either saucer-shaped, triangle-shaped, or and orb-shaped, those three. Triangle-shaped are basic. Very large, very quiet, low-flying. Some will have like 3 lights down the middle on the belly. Some have no lights. They're that large that when they pass overhead, they block out the sky. If you have a clear, starry night, they just block out the sky. They're all very dark in color. Even when there's a full moon, you can see that the one gentleman said it wasn't black. He said it was like a dark gray to him. So it's over last year, they picked up quite a bit.
What do you think is causing the increase? Pardon me.
I think people over time, and I've seen it just about in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, people have been more aware of UFOs, not only because of the idiot shows that are out there, and movies, but blog radio has played a big part of that. Coast to Coast, of course, another one. Researchers going online or on their websites or doing radio shows where they discuss them in earnest and in depth. So years ago, people, they'd say, well, how do you see a UFO? Well, look up. Well, now nobody has, and I sent it to England. They do stuff for NASA, and they sent it back and they said, well, here's what you got, and it's not one craft, you got 3 crafts. So, but to me, it just looked like a black line. But with the type of stuff they have to take apart a photograph, they can peel off a color, one piece at a time, and they just took it down to the raw footage, and sure as shooting, there were three discs in that cloud. Only cloud in the sky. Other than that, it was a perfectly clear blue day. And the only reason the person stopped to take the picture was because of that cloud. It just seemed strange that in that perfectly clear blue day that there's this huge white cloud up there, big fluffy thing, above the power plant. And the person that took that photograph was involved in law enforcement. So, yeah, we've had some strange ones. We really have. But they have picked up.
Do you think that a lot of these craft that people are seeing, and I know this is such a obvious question in regards to this, but people want to know, do you think that the craft that we are seeing, especially the triangles, which have been noted to be the famed TR-3Bs, do you think that they are our military? Do you think that they are of human construction, or do you think they are actually of an alien descent?
I would say a good deal of them are ours because of that particular model. but there are ones that, every time those T3Bs are seen, they're not really fast-moving objects. They're kind of on the slow side as opposed to what UFOs are, where the ones that are the strange ones are you have a triangle that is way, way bigger than any 747 that's up in the air now. Much longer, much wider, may have many lights on it, may have only a few lights on it. Some have a protruding nozzle out the front, and they're seen very high in the sky, and they go away in a blink of an eye. They're just gone. They're just that fast. And one fellow I talked to who reported one 2 years ago was a fighter pilot, and he said, "We don't have anything that moves that fast." He said, "I could basically watch a plane right now and tell you approximately how fast it's going." He said, "I'll be within 10 or 15 mile per hour, what I just told you." He said, "We don't have anything that goes that fast." And I said, okay. So, and another thing, a lot of military and a lot of pilots, especially pilots, mostly military, are coming out with a lot of information lately. It actually started about 6-8 months ago, where retired pilot was describing, a couple encounters that he had. And he said, with all the armament on my plane and the speed my plane had, he said, there ain't no way in hell, he said, I was going to catch that thing. He said, the speed it was going in my location off the coast of California, that probably thing just passed over Japan by the time I even figured out what to do. I went, wow. So, yeah, I think a lot of it's ours. Not all of it. Not all of it.
Well, let's focus on the triangles for a moment. Let's focus on the triangles. Sure. There were reports out of California that around the same time every day there were earthquakes coming from Nevada straight through California and over through the Pacific Ocean. A lot of them believed that that was the infamous Aurora project flying through at some ridiculous speed. I mean, it's been said that it can do anywhere between Mach 5 and 6 all the way up to like Mach 9. And if you think Mach 9 is, around 7,000 miles per hour, which is pretty darn fast. I mean, you can't even take a picture without it being blurry at that point. But do you think then that when it comes to these triangles, and the triangles alone, that they are maybe of alien technology, still made under human form, or do you think that there's a combination of both human and ETs flying these black triangles?
I think there's a combination. I've seen craft cross from horizon to horizon in less than a second. I've seen craft, triangle craft, and I've never been alone when I saw a sighting, thank God, because then I can rule out that I'm not really crazy. And we watched this thing. We could see a black line in the horizon, and it just approached so fast. We could see what it was as it went over, that it was a triangle. And this thing stopped dead, turned bright red, went horizontal, and went vertical, and went straight up.
Quick question from Gloria in the SOR Space Travelers Club on Facebook. She is asking, do you have any update on Todd C's?
Our ongoing investigation is now finishing year 6. We've gotten a lot of information in the last 2 years. I don't think we're too far off from making our decision on what we found. And I would say probably we just got some new eyewitness testimony that just came out of the clear blue. I've been trying to find this information for 4 years, and one night I got an email. And the guy said, you need to call me. And a law enforcement officer, retired, and I gave him a call, and he enlightened me with what he knew. So to a group of guys over there that nailed it down to saying it was more like copper. And this one is pretty much like gold. So hoping that we can finally wrap this thing up. I mean, we're going to be going into our 7th year, so, and I've run out of binder.
Hey, Butch, I got one quick question I want to fit in here. Well, we got about a minute left. Joe is asking in the SOR Space Travelers, what's your suggestions of the best way to take pictures of UFOs at night?
At night, no flash, on a tripod.
Well, I appreciate that. My friend, it's always a pleasure. UFOcop.com is Butch Witkowski. I'll wrap up this show now, because apparently everything is starting to skip on the audio front, and I could see it happening here. My computers, I don't know what's with them. Maybe it's my internet signal. It's what happens when you live out in the boonies like old Davey does. Tomorrow night on the show, Andrea Message will join us. She is the Paranormal Rona. We got a busy weekend. Rooms. You guys are doing awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you tomorrow night on the mighty SOR. Take care. See you in 21 hours. Thanks.